Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to export your Adobe Illustrator work into Photoshop and then apply texture to the paths of your vector image. So, we have this nice clean vector image here, and my goal is to bring it into Photoshop and then add some interesting textures around the outlines of all these vector shapes. Okay, so I have a 2000 by 2000 pixel Adobe Illustrator file here. The word work and paths, these are two different objects. Work is a grouped object, and paths is the group object, and it's type converted to outlines. And then this blue circle is an object as well. Okay, so first of all, make sure your Adobe Illustrator file is saved at a known location. Okay, because when we export this, it's going to go into the same folder. So make sure you know where your Adobe Illustrator file is residing on your hard drive. Then let's export it. So let's go File, Export, Export As, and in the Format drop-down menu, make sure you choose Photoshop. It'll probably default to PNG, so we want to go to Photoshop, and also note that it's going to go to the same folder where your Adobe Illustrator file is residing. So let's export it. I'm going to keep this in RGB. I like high resolution, 300 ppi is good. And click, and write layers, have that option selected as well. That's important. Okay, let's click OK. And then we'll go into Finder or Windows Explorer, and here is the newly created Photoshop file in the same folder as our Illustrator file. So I'm going to double click and open it. And as you see, it clipped the canvas right to the image. And there's one other thing before we move along here. I want you to be aware, check the file size of this thing. So my Illustrator file was a 2000 by 2000 pixel vector image, which is very reasonable, extremely small file in file size. Now if I go to, but I want you to do this, go to Image, Image Size, and double check your image size. Okay, so I don't know why it does this. I'm sorry, I don't know. But this came in as 7,000 pixels wide, and it's at 20 megabytes. So just for this, extraordinarily simple image, 20 megabytes is, ridiculous. So I'm going to crank this down. I don't want it too small though, so I think 3,000 pixels is reasonable. So remember, I went to image size. I'm changing the width to 3,000 pixels. So I just decreased the size of my entire file there. So that's cool. So let me do a Command or Control S to save that. And now what I want to do is just add some canvas around this so it's not clipped, so I can see what I'm working with. So I'm going to go to Image, Canvas Size, and I don't know, let's make the width, I just want like some space to work on here. So I'm going to make the image 3500 wide, and let's make the height like 600, and your size might vary. I made it 500. I hit the wrong button. And so all I did there, whoa. Let's do that again, gang. I put in too many numerals there, too many zeros. Height is 600, not 6,000. Okay, that looks right. Ta-da! Okay, so all I did was expand the canvas so I can, so the image isn't clipped, so I can see what I'm doing here. Alright, so now let's check out our layers. So it'll come in as a folder if you have multiple stuff like I did. And so let's check this out. What's in here? Okay, it's got the ellipse, so I'll click on the eyeball. That's the ellipse. This is the word paths, and this is the word work. Alright, so a couple things. Let me close this up again. Instead of having a clear transparent background, I'm going to make a white background. I suggest you do the same. Make a new layer, call it white. Put the white layer underneath at the very, very bottom. Okay. In the color picker, choose the white color. Choose your paint bucket tool and fill it with white. Okay, so that's all we're going to do with that. That just makes it nice and neat so we can see it. Okay, let's go select the layer 1 again and open it up. And let's first work with the word work. So I'm going to put like a fuzzy brush texture around the word work. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is get the correct color. Okay. I'm going to have like just a fuzzy texture around the word work, and it's going to be black. So hit I for eyedropper tool. Select the color of the word work, and it's black, but there's all different kinds of black. I want to make sure it's the same black. So I selected that, so I got this black work color in the forefront. Select your brush tool, or hit B for brush tool. And then, okay, the brush tool is selected. So up here, with these drop-down menus, where it says the pixel size, I'm going to hit the drop-down menu. And I'm going to choose an interesting textured brush. And these are all just in the default dry media Photoshop brushes. So I'll pick rough dry brush, but you can choose any really, just to play around with this. Alright, so I got that, and then I don't know what size brush I want yet, but I'm gonna I think like 50 pixels might be a good place to start. Okay, and you'll see there's going to be some experimentation. I got an error message on my brush, don't worry about that. Oh, it's because I was on a different layer. Anyway, so select a brush. Again, I chose this rough dry brush, and I'm at close to 50 pixels here. And then I'm getting this error message because I have a folder selected, is why the Photoshop is yelling at me. Okay, so let's go to the work layer, okay, which is right here. Now I'm going to add a layer on top of it. And just for the purposes of this demonstration, so nobody gets confused, I'm going to call this work texture. Okay, so that layer is selected. And just to recap, gang, I got a textured brush selected at 50 pixels. I got the correct black color selected. I made a new layer. Alright, so now what I want to do is select the word work. And the way I do that is I hold down Command or Control. Hold down Command on the Mac, Control on the PC, hold that down. Hover over the image on the layer here, just like I am doing right here. And I'll click this. And when I back up, you can see now I got the marching ants around the word work. Alright, now, and again, this work texture layer above the word work is selected. Let's go to paths, the paths tab. Currently there's nothing in there. This drop-down menu, click that on the paths tab and click make work path. And I'll click that and I'll get this thing, make tolerance 2 pixels, that's okay. And here's what happens. Now I get a handy dandy path on that selection, which is really cool. So like I could use the pen tool options and edit it and everything else, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I got my path selected. That's groovy. Let me go back. And remember, I have this layer enabled, the layer on top of the word work, which I call work texture. Okay, so here I'm in paths. I got my path visible. Yay. I chose a brush. Yes. You're wondering, get to the punchline already, right? All right, come on down here, and there's these two little symbols. Fill paths, don't want to do that. This stroke path with brush. This is the magical button here. So hover over stroke path with brush, click it, and what it'll do is it stroked. Let's go back to, okay, well, first here you can see what it looks like here in our workspace, right? It added the brush texture on the path. Let's take a look at our layers palette here. So let me disable the word work. See, that's what we made with our, let me zoom in more. Okay, so this is what we started with, and this is after we added the that brush texture to the path. So now how do you deselect this path, this annoying path? You can just go to the Paths tab and just click and you deselect it. So let's go back, let's look at our work again here. So anyway, this is what we made. We made a path and then we filled it with this this brush stroke. Suppose we hate that, okay? And it looks really kind of chunky and kind of stupid. So let's make a new layer, and I'll call it work text 2, okay? Work texture 2, right? And let me turn off the eyeball and work texture. So, okay, so here we are back to the square one, really. Okay, so let's go back to paths, select the path layer, and let's do that again, but let's change our brush stroke. Okay, so let's hit the brush, and I thought that was like too chunky, so let's crank it down to like 17 pixels. And then I'm going to make, come over here, the stroke path with brush. And as you can see, it magically made a much less chunkier stroke here. So let's go back to layers. So this is the first texture we put on it. That's the second texture we put on it, which is, looks a little bit more sane. But what I'm saying is you can, continue to experiment with this. For example, if you hate that, just disable the eyeball, make a new layer, choose a new brush. Like, let's try, we're just messing around here. So let's choose large texture stroke. Okay, yippee, and it defaulted to 50 again. Let's crank that down to like 27, and then go to paths and click the button here, the stroke path with brush, and I'll back up so you can see it, and that's the effect we get with that one. Okay, so you can do this till the cows come home, right? You can go back to layers, you can delete the ones that you hate, etc. And you can do that with all of these objects. The one thing I want to show you, though, is, okay, let's do this ellipse. Okay, so look, and this will kind of like burn into your brain cells, like what we got to do here. So let me center this first. Okay, so we're going to work with this ellipse. So I want a fuzzy texture around my this light blue circle. So remember, eye for eyedropper tool and select the color. first, remember that. Second, B for brush tool, and choose a choose a textured brush. So I'm going to try scattered dry brush just for the heck of it, right? All right, so that's cool. Now I got my color, I got my brush. This is at 14 pixels, which I know is like way too small, so I'm going to like increase the size. And remember, if I don't like this, I can always redo it, just like I did with the work one. Next, make a new layer, and you don't have to name layers, but it helps me. So I'm going to say blue texture. Okay, cool. And make sure that layer is selected. Now we got to select this path. So we hold down the Command or Control key, and over the image in the layer, I'm going to click. So now I'll back up. Now I got marching ants around the object. That's really good. The next step is to make this selection into a work path. So go to Paths, hit the drop-down menu, and click Make Work Path. And then Tolerances 2.0, click OK. And by the way, there's only one active work path at a time, so it'll overwrite the other work path that you had, but that's not a big deal. All right, so I got the work path created for my blue object. You know, I got the color correct. I got my brush selected. So now I'm going to click the magical button here, stroke path with brush, and then there you go. There's my brush stroke added to my ellipse there. One last thing before we move on here. Suppose I want some like internal element. I want to add a stroke to some internal element here. So I'm going to make a new layer again, and I'll call this dark blue texture. I for eyedropper tool, because we got to set the color. And so I'm going to select the color of this internal blue circle, which is where I want to add texture. Now this is different. I'll go to Select, Color Range, and on the object select the blue, and I get a little readout here. That's what I want to select. Click OK. So now I got marching ants around the dark blue circle. So now I'm going to make a work path. So I'll go to Paths, hit the drop down menu, make work path of the selection is what Photoshop is thinking there. So yeah, tolerance is 2, that's good. So now that is the new work path that's created, and it overwrote the previous one. Okay, so then just press, I'll just keep the same brush I used for the other one. Press the button here, and there I added texture to that internal circle. You know, it doesn't look super duper great, but it worked. All right, so anyway, if you never did this before, maybe that's a lot to take in. But, you know, just rewind the video, look it over. And so anyway, the point is, you now have the tools to bring your vector work into Photoshop and to apply, like, you know, textures to all your vector paths.